But for Jesus, God is a loving Father, and He is the Father and God of the whole humanity. He is the creator of everything that was created. Can you make the wedding guest fast when the bridegroom is still with them? May the peace and joy of Christ be with you today. In today's gospel, we see some of the Pharisees and scribes approaching Jesus and asking him why their disciples and the disciples of John the Baptist were fasting, but his disciples did not. Now we know John the Baptist grew up in forest, and then his diet was locust and honey, and he led a severe austere life, and he taught the disciples to do the same, and he called the people for strict penitential ways. And the Pharisees and the scribes and their disciples also tried to do the same, though most of the time their practice was external than internal, interior spiritual life. But most often we see Jesus and his disciples in the context of meal or banquet, drinking and eating. And that's what the Pharisees and scribes could not digest, could not understand. Remember, at the same time, Jesus never discarded or disrespected fasting. He fasted himself 40 days and 40 nights, and maybe more than that on different occasions. There is always proper, appropriate time for fasting. And Jesus spoke about fasting along with prayer and almsgiving. And he says there are ways and times to do it. Now Jesus responds to their question in two ways. First of all, Jesus speaks in the context of a wedding. And that's where he asks, can you make the wedding guests fast when the bridegroom is still with them? The Jewish wedding was, and still is a very joyful occasion which will last for a week, where they will have dancing, lots of food and drink. Especially they would need more wine, which we saw at the wedding at Cana, where Jesus had to intervene to make new wine. And everyone would be enjoying the presence of the bridegroom. And there, no one would think of fasting. And you cannot ask the guest to fast. And here, Jesus is the bridegroom. You cannot fast when he's around. We need to just simply enjoy his presence. Just listen to his life-giving words that come from his mouth. The second response is even deeper, and he says that in more of a parable. Old cloth and new cloth, and new wine and old wineskin. You cut a piece from the new cloth to attach to old cloth. New cloth is stronger, old cloth is not as strong as this, and gradually the old cloth will tear off from the new cloth. And pouring new wine into old wineskin. The new wine is still fermenting and expanding, whereas the old wineskin, which is made of God's skin, is already expanded and then is already worn out. So it cannot contain the new wine which is still expanding. So the result will be loss of the new wine and the wineskin. The point here is this: his understanding, his whole vision of God and humanity is much broader and expanding than the rigid vision that existed about God in his life context. For them, God is just their God, God of the Jews, with all these rigid laws and norms. But for Jesus, God is a loving Father, and He is the Father and God of the whole humanity. He is the creator of everything that was created. And God is not to be understood in a rigid frame or to be understood in the context of a punishment and excommunication. But God is to be understood as love and compassion and forgiveness and mercy. The presence and thought of God is to be celebrated, not to be feared of punishment. You do not live your life out of fear, but you live your life in the freedom of a child of God. And therefore, the presence of Jesus is to be experienced and celebrated. When you have the company of Jesus, the bridegroom, just enjoy his company. Just enjoy his presence and celebrate his presence. Forget about everything else. Forget about what to give up. Forget about fasting, but focus on Jesus. You would naturally renounce things that are not needed. My dear friend, what would you prefer? To be a rigid and proud Pharisee who will live in fear and prejudice? Or a joyful wedding guest of the bridegroom and a follower of Jesus who is open to accepting the new vision of Jesus? May the love of Christ redeem us. Amen.